Today's podcast is brought to you by Craft in Style, a subscription box from Pop Shop America. Do you love to DIY? Get modern and cool kits delivered right to your door each month with the Craft in Style subscription box from Pop Shop America. Boxes ship within 3 business days, so there's no waiting like other subscription boxes. And each box is super stylish and beginner friendly. January's box is a gilded dinosaur planter kit with 4 live plants, colored rocks, and moss, and all the supplies you need to create a fun dino planter. So check it out at popshopamerica.com. Thanks so much, Pop Shop America. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 136 of the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today, we are talking about building an embroidery business with my guest, Megan Eckman. Megan is the owner and head designer of Studio MME, which creates approachable embroidery kits for modern stitchers. After failing her grandmother's embroidery lessons as a kid, she came back to the craft in 2014 and realized it needed a major update. She now makes kits that help others learn embroidery in a fun and easy manner. It's crafting with hand holding. Over the past 5 years, she's landed her kits in almost 100 shops across the country, partnered with DMC, hired her husband, and currently runs an Embroidery of the Month Club for her most adoring and addicted fans. So, Megan Eckman, welcome.
Hi. Welcome. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming on the show. And I'm excited to talk with you about this business that you've built and kind of the winding path toward getting there. Specifically, I'm super interested in talking about kind of your product development and how you landed on embroidery kits, because it's not necessarily like a straightforward shot as to how you got there. And I think it's super interesting. I've been working a lot with people who are developing creative businesses through consulting work that I do. And a lot of what we talk about is product development and the twists and turns of that, some of the resistance that can come with finding the right product and listening to customers, and then your own feelings about your own artwork and how to kind of land on something that works and feels good. So that's kind of where I want to end up with your story, but we're going to start more toward the beginning. I know you grew up in North Dakota, which is pretty cool. I've never been to North Dakota, but that's a pretty cool place to grow up. So where in North Dakota were you?
I was in the only town anybody knows, Fargo.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't have the accent. But yeah, I grew up there. It was really, obviously a quiet place, although we were in the biggest city. And I went to college just across the river in Moorhead in Minnesota. So I at least got out of the state, which was a big step.
Okay. And I know your dad was a pretty artistic person, even if he wasn't necessarily like a working artist.
Yes. So I grew up with, my dad really wanted to be an artist, but he was the last of 7 kids. And when he graduated from high school, his parents literally gave him a suitcase and said, good luck. So he had to go to a trade school to be able to support himself, and he wanted to marry my mom. So he had to just sort of give it up as a career. But on the side, when I was little, he would always be drawing and painting. So as soon as I was about 3 to 4, they said they knew I had the potential. So they threw me, without asking, like into every art class there was that they could find in the area, private lessons. And I just did it, and I was really good. I have no qualms about saying that. I was really good. And it wasn't something, though, that I thought I wanted to do as a profession. I just wanted to learn as much as possible. One of the stipulations to get as much education as you can in the arts. Generally, in colleges, you have to major, which wasn't my intention. So I ended up having to double major. So I really wanted to be a writer. So I had my degree in creative writing, and then I had to add the degree in fine art, which is drawing. And the first few years, I really fought the art because this sounds so silly, but when I was little, I didn't want to be my dad. And so he always drew portraits. And so as a teenager, my rebellious stage was, I'm just going to draw animals. So I drew animals and like buildings, anything that wasn't a person. And as soon as I got to art school, it was a very classical education. So it was all busts, like you start with the sculpture busts. And then once you move up, you get the live models. And one day I stepped back from my portrait and I just dropped my head inside and I was like, darn it. I became my father. It looked just like his, the same style. I mean, he could have done it. And I knew at that point, there really wasn't any fighting it anymore. So I did end up getting both of the degrees in the end. And the thing that led to the business was that my mother, who was very practical, had a stipulation that I needed to start a business before I graduated. So she really wanted to know that I could make any sort of money if I was going to go into these artsy-fartsy degrees. So actually, in the winter of 2009, just like a month before I graduated, I started Studio Me and was selling prints of my artwork, which actually got me into a lot of trouble with my fellow students. They saw it as an absolute sellout because these were digital prints, which is the only way to reproduce artwork that isn't through printmaking. And I was selling it for more than most of the printmakers were selling their prints, which was their problem, not mine. So I actually, when I graduated, a lot of people were mad with me, but I knew that this was the only way to make a living, and that throughout all of history, artists have taken commissions. They've sold reproductions of their work. This is the norm. The idea that we've vaulted up, that you can make it with never doing commissions and making solely what you want, really just leads most artists to leave the craft or, have to get another job because there's no way they can make it that way.
And then you had like a book project that one of your professors had helped to arrange at some point, correct?
I did. And so that was the first big gig I got, was to illustrate this professor's book. It was the hardest thing because they were not an art professor, and it was pen and ink. And she approved all of the sketches and the drafts and everything. And then when I finished it, then she wanted to change things, which it's pen and ink. It's hard to just move legs and stuff around. So I actually had to buy a Wacom tablet, learn Photoshop, tweak everything. And then it ended up, they ran out of money, so it didn't actually get published. They still paid me. But it never made it anywhere. So it was some good life lessons, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you apply to graduate school? Were you thinking you would keep going with education?
So I did. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he was also he's a photographer. So he did the same. I made the mistake that I did not yet know what direction I wanted to go. So I applied to creative writing and a fine art. But because I'd done both majors, I don't think I had a clear idea of what I wanted, and I hadn't spent enough time in either to really have a good enough portfolio to win for either of them. So I actually got rejected by everybody, which was one of the hardest life lessons I ever had. I mean, I ate so much ice cream that month.
No.
I'd never been rejected before for anything. Like, it had always just come easy. And to just get these letters after letters after letters, and you've spent so much money applying. And luckily, my husband landed one in California, because otherwise we didn't know what we were going to do. Because we knew we had to get out of the area, but we didn't quite know how. Two artists are going to get anywhere and make some money.
So you ended up moving to California with him. Okay.
The option of staying or going to San Jose, California.
Okay.
It's definitely a go with.
Right. Yeah. Where the weather is nicer. But it's also super expensive.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I had no idea. And that was, so I kept my business going, but I mean, I was making $10,000, $14,000 a year from doing little like Etsy shows or fairs, selling my art prints. So I did have to get a part-time retail job at Borders for the 8 months until it closed. And I learned how not to run business through them. So those were good lessons. And then I actually got hired, and some of your audience members might know or remember, but so I was actually hired to be a virtual assistant to Tara Gentili and Megan Alman and Jess Van Den of Australia and a few other.
How did you meet? I remember when you were working as a VA for Jess Van Den, but how did you meet Tara Gentili and Megan Alman? Like, how did you make those connections?
It's kind of funny once you're the virtual assistant for one, the others all try to like grab you at the same time. And
what were some of the things? I mean, those are some high-powered women who have, built pretty, impressive businesses in sort of the maker and service-based businesses spaces, advising makers. And I'm just wondering what some of the lessons you pulled away. I mean, just working with them, working with their, I'm sure, sort of scheduling their content, promoting some of their content, that kind of thing. There's probably things that you pulled away from those, pulled out from those experiences that you take forward.
The two biggest things that I got out of it, one was from Tara, and that was that we like to think of a service-based business and a product-based business is very different, but there's actually a lot of crossover. And so that actually is like where with my embroidery kits, it's a product, but you are giving them this sort of the service of time spent in meditation or sewing. And then like the club is also a service, it comes regularly, it gives you something. But I think the biggest thing I took away from it really was there is no shame in really figuring out what you are, like, what's the thing that you have to do, but that then all the rest can be parceled out to other people. We really seem to focus on right now, we kind of talk about, it's handmade, it's one person doing it all. But technically, with my kids, they're all handmade. But it's somebody in China who's hand making my hoops for me. It's somebody in England who's hand making my needles for me. There's nothing wrong with being big enough to hire other people and to just say, like, for me, design is what I'm best at. And I have my packer, Sandy, who's, best at packing. And I'm helping her pay for her daughter's wedding. She's going to Austria next year, things she's never gotten to do before. That's from my business being successful enough to help other people. Just kind of getting rid of that shame of not doing everything.
Yeah, gosh, that's such a huge hurdle too. And we talk about that often on this podcast just because we come from such a DIY background. And so there's this assumption that DIY means you have to do it all yourself. And that means building your own website, maintaining WordPress, emptying the garbage can at the end of the day, cleaning, absolutely everything, being able to do InDesign, being able to do Photoshop, servicing your sewing machine. I mean, whatever, you name it, every single aspect. Learning how to use your DSLR camera, absolutely everything. And it was incredibly eye-opening to me as well when I realized that, a sewing pattern business that's, incredibly successful, like Colette, for example, that they have a pattern maker and a photographer and all these other people, and it's a team, and that, you don't have to be this singular genius who does everything. And in fact, if that was the case, your business would never be able to scale because it would be impossible. There's just only so much a single person can do. And so it's actually not ideal for it to be one person. It is ideal for it to be multiple people being able to make this happen, because that's the only way for it to happen in a larger way.
Yeah. And your customers aren't offended. They want you to be around. They don't mind that, oh, you had to hire somebody. Like, that doesn't make them like you less.
Right.
Most people have no idea what goes on in the back end of any business. So they really won't know if you have people or not. If that's, if it's just your perception of what people think that's holding you back, they don't really know.
Yes, exactly. Yes, 100%. So, and then you were making artwork to sell and these prints, and your work is very sort of like linear. And so how did you come to make this into an embroidery project from a drawing, basically an illustration? Like, when was that moment and how did that develop?
It was a very, very stressful time. We were making, through the business, we'd maybe gotten up to 20,000, which in the Bay is not enough to live on. I don't know how we did it, thinking back. I would do all these events, and it was like pulling teeth. I would try to get shops. It's actually quite hard for retail shops to sell prints because they generally put them all in a bin, and then people have to look through them. And you generally don't buy artwork for other people because it's kind of presumptuous, and they have to frame it.
And were you doing like a wholesale, like B2B shows at all, like gift shows or
not
trade
yet. So
shows?
I was mostly just doing like Etsy, because Etsy was, I just drive up to San Francisco. So all the Renegade fairs we would do.
Okay. So you were doing,
when they were early.
Yeah. Like craft shows. So B2C,
yes.
Customers, cash and carry kind of craft shows. Okay.
I did. Yep. And then I did have quite a few wholesale accounts as well at that time.
And how did those come to you? Just shops seeing you on Etsy and reaching out and saying, hey, I'd like to carry some of these or something like that?
I actually cold pitched.
Okay.
Like crazy amounts, like 200 shops in a go I could do in a season.
Just emailing them out and just saying, here's some pictures. I make these. Here's the prices. Do you want to carry these?
Yep.
Okay.
And it worked really well, but I was getting to the point where I was making things, and then if they didn't sell, I would get very upset. Like people would say, oh, I'd love a print of this, and you'd make it, and then nobody bought it. And I was starting to get really angry. I was starting to get burnt out. I wasn't liking what I was making, because in that sort of environment, you really have to go with the trend. And the way I was trained and the way my mind thought, like, I'm just a really weird person. I didn't want to do with the trends. So I was getting very disgruntled. My husband knew what was happening, and he just kind of kept telling me, like, you have to take a break, which is hard when, you're the sole moneymaker.
And like people would say to you, like they would see your art and they would say, I want a print of that one. And so you would do it, and then they wouldn't buy it. And then you would get angry.
With rabbits. And you're like, okay. So then you draw something with rabbits, and then crickets.
Nobody would buy it. Yeah. And then you'd get mad at the customer.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Childish, but
but I actually think so I am in a lot of like Etsy Facebook groups for Etsy sellers, for example. And people do feel very angry at customers that way. It's actually a really common feeling where, people feel like customers asked for this, so I made this, and then nobody bought it. And now I'm like mad at them, and I feel resentful toward them because they said they would want it in green, and I made it in green, and now I'm stuck with it. And how come they didn't follow through? I want to take a minute now to talk about our sponsor, the Craft and Style subscription box from Pop Shop America. So this is a subscription box that's full of crafty goodness. You get a box in the mail each month with a different craft project, and you can either order it for yourself or you can give it as a gift. So for example, in September, The box was all about candle making, and it contained everything you need to make a beeswax and lavender bud candle. So soy wax and beeswax, essential oils, and lavender buds. These are things that I personally do not have in my crafty stash at home, but would be really fun to try. And so I think the nice thing about getting a subscription box in the mail is that, well, first of all, it's fun to get snail mail, but also you kind of push yourself to try something different, something that you would not necessarily choose if you were out shopping for yourself. But since it comes in the mail, you're kind of like, maybe I'll try this. And I love that about subscription boxes. So it kind of pushes you and gets you out of your comfort zone. And also that this craft would just be for your own enjoyment. It's not necessarily something for your business. There's no pressure. It's not something that you're going to be making as a gift or something that you have to give to somebody else. It's really just for you. And those are two really nice things about getting a subscription box like this. So other boxes have included sunprint photography, gilding, making bath soaks, paper marbling, kawaii jewelry making, all kinds of fun and adventurous things to try your hand at. So I like to give subscription boxes as presents. I think that they are really fun because they kind of spread out the fun over a longer period of time. And with the Pop Shop America Craft in Style subscription box, you can totally do that. You can treat someone you know to a fun box. And this would actually be a good gift for a teenager too, or just for an adult friend that you know that needs a little pick-me-up each month. And While She Naps listeners can save 15% off right now on the Pop Shop America website with the code While She Naps. So head on over and check it out. Thank you so much, Pop Shop America. And now back to my conversation with Megan.
So what you have to learn, and I'm still learning, is like you have to ask better questions, and you also have to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it's kind of, I never remember the Steve Jobs quote, but it's always, like if you ask people what they wanted, it wouldn't have been the iPod.
Right.
We didn't know. Most people don't really know what they want. Or, if somebody asks me, do you want chocolate cake or cookies? I'll tell you, but that doesn't mean I'm going to fish out my wallet and buy it. I just told you I want them.
Right. Totally true. And so anyway, you were having a lot of hard feelings. Yeah. Your husband said you should take a break. Okay. So then what happened?
Most creatives go in a flux. You kind of have these waves of creativity. And that was when I was in a funk and I needed to completely switch it up. And I knew that. So I dug around our apartment and I found some extra unprimed painting canvas and some black thread and needle. And I was just like, I remember embroidering with my grandma when I was about 7 to 9. And bless her, she taught my brother at the same time. So that was nice. And I was like, I just want to see if I can make something on this. So I took one of my most recent drawings, which was of this giant cat on its back. And it looks like there's kind of ocean waves. And it was a pun. It was called Meowby Dick instead of Moby Dick. And I just kind of sketched it on with a pencil. And then I just started just making a little running stitch, just like sprinkle shapes, and trying to figure out how I would actually sew this. And I finished it that night. I took some pictures, put it on Facebook because Instagram wasn't around yet. And, just felt better. That kind of helped get things moving again. It was a project just for me. It felt like something I wanted to make. And the next morning, my Facebook had kind of exploded. And everybody was like, oh, I want to make one. Nobody said, can I buy this? They all said, I want to make one. And that was when I started kind of considering most of my work. It was line work, pen and ink. So it transferred really well. And I was like, yeah, I could see people wanting to make that. So I went to the craft store and just kind of, I knew that was where you could get patterns and such. And they had the same iron-on transfers that I had done with my grandma. And they were, when I was 7, I thought Day of the Week cats on my hoodies were awesome. But now I realize it was really, really dorky. So I didn't want to make like those. But I kind of just looked at, what you get in a kit, who is selling what, like how I could get these, like what did you actually need to make embroidery? Because I had come about it, my grandma taught me with the iron-ons, but the way I had done it with Me I'll Be Dick was just me and a pencil and some thread, which most people can't do. I mean, unless you're very confident, in your drawing, most people don't embroider that way. So I started to just kind of figure out, okay, so I need some fabric. I went to Joann's. I need iron-ons. So I contacted Colonial Patterns, which was the one selling the day of the week ones there. And they said, yeah, we definitely do custom stuff like this all the time. Just send us the files. And I was like, okay. And then I went back to Joann's and got some thread and some hoops. And I just kind of mishmashed this thing together. And then at the next retail show, I tested out, I had like 2 or 3 kit designs and they sold out immediately. And my art prints sat there and didn't sell at all. That continued for a few more craft shows and like a few seasons. I kept selling both things because I really had a hard time letting go of the art prints, even though it was still getting frustrating by them not selling. And then, eventually looking at the numbers, it became obvious that this is the direction it needed to go. And, my husband just kind of said, like, why don't you just go with what's easy? The art can always be on the side for you. And then it can be what you want it to be instead of having to be, beholden to the customer, or you don't have to feel as much stress. You can just make what you want and it can still be that kind of magic, and let the embroidery follow the trends, because to me, it's not fine art. So I'm fine. Like when sloths came out, I'll make a sloth kit, or when deer were big, we'll make a deer kit. Like that doesn't bother me as much as it did with the fine art, because the fine art's like, no, I don't, I know sloths are in, but I don't want to draw a sloth. Like it's not what I'm feeling today.
But do you still have, like, do you still get into it? In other words, are you still able to bring your positive feelings toward the design of the embroidery kit when you sit down to be like, okay, new season, it's time to create some new designs, a new set of designs for Studio Me's, embroidery kits. Do you still feel passionate and excited, even though it's going to have to be, llamas, because llamas are, llamas are hot, or whatever the next big thing is? You know what I mean? Or do you kind of feel like it's a slog, or you're like pandering to the lowest common denominator, and so you just have to do it? You know what I mean?
Yep. So I have found over the last few years that there are some tricks. So artists work best under some restrictions. So I let people shout out as many ideas as they want. I put them all in a spreadsheet, see which get the most votes. And then it's kind of like, how would I draw? And the one I did most recently was like an oxalotl, the salamander. And I was like, oh, how am I going to? So it actually becomes a bit of a challenge, but also like this joy of like, okay, how would Studio Me draw? Like what would a Studio Me oxalotl kit look like? Like what colors would it have? It's a cute creature, but it's really not pretty. How would we do it? There are some that I try and try and try and try, and I just can't do an elephant. Everybody wants an elephant, and I can't figure it out because it's a giant creature. It doesn't have feathers. It doesn't have fur. Unless you're going to do all the wrinkles, but then it's gray. Like there's some things I just have to keep tossing out because I can't figure out. I do, thanks to the club, I give myself permission to make as many as I want to, and then we narrow it down from there. So I really let myself play as much as I want. I did dinosaurs. I did succulents in pots. We've done narwhals, like anything that, oddly enough, it's the ones that my husband is like, that's never going to work. That's the one that I can get. And I get the same feeling that I get from some of my fine art, where it's like something is kind of helping you along and you step back and you're like, that's going to be a good one. They're going to like that one.
Okay. And so it does sound like, I can hear from your voice, like it does still sound like you can get that same good feeling from it, because you have the constraint, but you can still sort of get creative and give it your own twist.
Yeah, and I go through the same emotional process that I do with fine art. So my roommate used to say in college that she could tell how far along I was by how grumpy I was, because you really go into battle. And right before it gets good, it gets really, really bad. And you get really, really mad at it. And then you come out the other side and it's like, oh, that was fine. That never happened.
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, that's, my husband, ask him, he'll tell you that's exactly the same process, whether it's an article or that I'm writing or a new design. Yeah, totally.
You know, when you get to the point where you're just like, oh, that you're like, it's going to be okay. We're going to come out the other side in like 20 minutes.
So, the embroidery kits were selling and they felt easy, as your husband said, and the art prints just were sitting there, and it became obvious from looking at the numbers of what was and what wasn't selling that this was the direction to go in. And I always sort of equate this to my first two book proposals. The first one was incredibly complicated because I thought that that's what was required to write a book. Yeah. You know, I had this very overly complex idea in my mind. So I wrote this table of contents, you know, as part of the book proposal that was so complicated and it took forever. And then the editor I was working with was like, well, why don't you just do a book about the birds? Because I was also making soft sculpture birds. And as soon as she said that, I wrote the table of contents in like 5 minutes. And I was like, here it is. Like, it just came right out.
This feeling like this is the way I was supposed to go.
I was like, oh, we can just do that. That's so easy.
That was easy, yeah.
Yeah. And so that became really easy. And so that's how you landed at this product. And I'm wondering, I know you have a whole sort of set of these kits that is around places in the United States. They're like landmarks. And I think that that's just really brilliant because people, whether they are wanting to make something that's sort of commemorating their home, you know, like the San Francisco Bay Bridge or something like that, or they're traveling and they want to get a memento from, you know, a souvenir from where they've been. That's like the perfect thing that they can like stitch on the airplane on the way home to remind them of where they've been. And I can also see, you know, local shops. That's the perfect thing to stock because it's like, you know, get something that you can only get here that would remind you of being here. I mean, it's just absolutely ideal. And so I wondered if you could sort of talk about how you came to create something that was of a landmark and how that's developed as part of your business.
Sure. So I come from Fargo, North Dakota, and it's a place that I don't really consider it, you know, my home anymore. It's much more the Bay has influenced me now. I came from a place where you don't want to say that you're from there. Like, there's nothing special. Like, there's no landmark. It's flat. There's a river, but I mean, you don't go swimming in that river. There's catfish in it. There's nothing that when people think of your city, they think of the movie with the wood chipper. So when I moved to the Bay, I was really struck by how many people were proud of their city. And it was really special to them. One woman told me at a show, she had a whole room that was painted Golden Gate orange and only had pictures of the Golden Gate in it. Like, she loved San Francisco so much. She had a whole room to it. And I realized that, unlike me, most people got to come from a place that had something that either the locals liked or was this big landmark. And I kind of started listing out the things, you know, the Golden Gate Bridge or the Space Needle. A lot of times, too, the things that locals like are very different than the tourists. So up here where I am outside of Portland, like Mount Hood, or as they call it, the mountain, you know, is really a symbol of the area. So I was kind of playing with designs. And like you mentioned, the practical side of me was realizing this could be a really great wholesale tool because, like you said, the local shops want it because they've got everything else, you know, Golden Gate themed or Brooklyn Bridge themed. It's great for people who are proud of where they live and have the room of the Golden Gate. Or a lot of people buy them now for people who've moved away So when they go to college, I have moms that buy them and stitch them up for their kids. They sometimes make them into pillows so they could take that with them to college. Tourists buy them because they go into the retail shops and get, mementos. We started doing national park ones too, which I'm still working on getting them into the national parks. That's a much harder market to crack. But again, it just as soon as I did the Golden Gate, I couldn't keep that one in my booth for the Etsy Renegade at Christmas. It would sell out within hours. It was crazy. I could never make enough of it because it was such a perfect gift for the holidays.
Mm-hmm. Right. So fascinating. And so have you done trade shows since then? Have you done any of the gift shows, or are you still just doing craft shows?
So we actually stopped doing craft shows. This is our second year without them, which makes the holiday season so much nicer.
It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
It got to the point where we just kind of crunched the numbers, and it really wasn't I'd rather be at home and just have all the wholesale orders go out in October and me be in my pajamas drinking cocoa. So we have done, I think I did 2 Etsy Renegade. They did some wholesale shows in the Bay right before the retail shows. So a certain night of the week. We've done the Seattle gift show twice, but the West Coast really doesn't have a good wholesale trade show.
Okay.
So we are now looking at New York now.
I was going to say, do you want to do New York now? Yeah.
The issue that I have, because I'll be honest, is a lot of shops seem to be finding me through Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of money for me, and it's a lot of money for them to fly out. And I'm going to start surveying my shops to actually see if they go to trade shows anymore.
That's a great question.
If they don't, then there's no point. Surveying my best shops, which some of them are Fancy Tiger in Denver is kind of a makery shop. And then I have some more boutique shops. And I want to ask both of them, is this even something you do? Because a lot of times now they can just find what they want on social media, and then they don't have to fly. They don't have to get the food. They don't have to get the rooms. At this point, I don't think we're going to do it, because I know from doing all of Megan Almond's workshops when I was doing her emails and such, it's 3 years to get a good return on your investment.
Yeah,
and
it's a lot of money, because you're looking
about $8,000.
I was just going to say, you're looking at $8,000.
Yeah,
yeah, and I don't know if you listened to the Proof to Product podcast, but with Katie Hunt, but it's more paper focused than quilting, or this podcast is sort of more fabric and quilting focused, but her show, and she comes from a paper background, but she really focuses on trade shows, and she knows a lot about them, and I've learned a lot about what it takes to exhibit at New York Now, or really she focuses a lot on the National Stationery Show from listening to those episodes. So if you are interested and want to sort of get a little bit more kind of insider scoop, or for anybody who listens to this show and is interested, I totally recommend her show. And you'll just pick up some tips about, what it really requires and what the rewards might be, and I guess my feeling is that it might be worth doing once. You know what I mean? And, and sort of building the relationships that you get from that one go from there, and then sort of not necessarily having to go every single time, but just skip it all together. I guess I feel do it once.
Yeah, but I know.
At the same time, though, I don't know, there's you have to have walls, and you have to build out the booth, and it's if you do it once and you've invested in all of that infrastructure, it's do you just do it once after all of that? It gets cheaper as that stuff, once you've invested in it once, why not use it again? So it becomes a little bit hard to say that, unless you can share a booth with somebody who's already got some of those things built. But
yeah. Mm-hmm. And we looked at doing the retail shows again, like the holiday fairs and whatnot. From when we started to now, the game has completely changed. In Portland, it's a little different. Portland is still very much in the DIY. So like I just walked one of their shows for the holidays and they've still got, like drapes and like blankets up in the back and like that stuff's fine. But when you do San Francisco, I mean, there were people with hard walls, furniture, fake flooring. I mean,
it's super pro. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no way you can come in with your table and tablecloth anymore.
It's almost like how Etsy's changed. It's like you can't just like pop up a blurry picture and hope for the best. You have to have because that's what I used to do and things would still sell like back in 2005. Like things would sell and I seriously had no idea what I was doing. But now that's just, that's a no-go. Like you can't run it.
Yeah, my mother-in-law was like, I should maybe put some stuff on Etsy. And I was like, no.
No, you can't.
No.
Just don't do that.
She's like, but maybe to sell like for $5. I'm like, yeah, but it's too much time and you don't know how to use your camera.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. Just like have a yard sale. You'll make more money.
Yeah. No, I know. I actually had a friend of mine's mom ask me that exact same thing. And I was just like, yeah, you don't know about SEO. Like, just don't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so different now.
Yeah. No. And let's talk a little bit about packaging. So I'm assuming back in the old days after you, went to Joanne and, figured out what, component parts you needed to put together a kit and all of that. Between then and now, the packaging for these items has changed because one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're putting a product into a retail store is that it needs to be packed in such a way that, hundreds and hundreds of people can pick it up, look at the back, look at the front, look inside potentially, and put it back down on the shelf. And then the next person comes and it looks just as good. And it's still saleable and it still looks brand new. And so that requires a kind of packaging that's, pretty robust and professional looking, and et cetera. So I guess talk about like sort of how you were packaging these things in the beginning and then how that's evolved and how they look now.
Okay. So I need to preface this with, I am not a crafter. I am really not an embroiderer. I'm like the gym teacher, like those who can't teach, those who can't craft, make kits.
Megan, come on now.
I know. No, I have a team of ladies who sew my kits for me. I can sew. I don't, to me, it's not what I enjoy.
So you make the design, but they sew the sample that is photographed.
Yep.
Okay.
Because I have other things that I find more enjoyable to do, and I'd rather have they love doing it, and I pay them. And I just have other people who love it more than I do, and my customers love it more than I do, and that actually gives me a very different perspective to make these kits. In that I am not my customer, which most people aren't anyway, but it's like I'm really not my customer. But I came about it as, okay, I know everything you need. And I know how I learned, and how I learned wasn't great. So how would I have liked to have learned? So first, when they came out, it was you had plain white fabric and an iron-on and a hoop. And so the iron-on and this little quarter sheet of paper with the image of what it would look like, and the fabric went into a cellophane bag that I hole punched, making sure not to punch through the fabric. And then I tied with a ribbon to the hoop because I'd seen other people do this. Okay, shops hate that. They really hate that because they come separated and it doesn't hang well. And people keep turning it over, and they could see because I had a cellophane bag, so they could at least see it. They could understand it, but it wasn't great. And they got damaged a lot if people ever sent them back to me. So then I thought, okay, so I won't tie them together. I'll leave the two parts, but I will put them in a bigger bag. That looked even worse because there was so much extra bag that it would just get wrinkled and crumpled and everything. So it was about this time that I realized, okay, nobody likes iron-ons, at least my customer. My customers don't like iron-ons because they might not have an iron. It's a little finicky. It's old school. And my designs were quite complicated. So figuring out what was meant to be what color was difficult. And I remember as a child kind of being overwhelmed that the patterns were all black and I didn't know what to put where. So thanks to the magic of Spoonflower, we switched to them, and they began printing our designs in color on the fabric. So now it's more like a paint by number. And then we still kind of like folded it, put the needle and the thread on top, and we still ended up putting it into a bigger bag, but now we made our kit papers bigger, but it was still just one page. So like the front had the picture of the finished tube and told you what was in it. And then the back was just a stitch guide that showed you what stitch went where. And then a little like very short directions. But the problem was people still didn't necessarily know how to sew. So we started on our website to put, at first it was just this PDF guide with little diagrams of how to do the stitches. So on the back side of your stitch guide, it would say at the bottom, like, need to learn how to sew, like go to this website and you can download a PDF. And so people really liked that because one, everything came together in this cellophane bag. Because the kit paper filled the bag didn't get damaged anymore. They could turn it over, see everything inside, and there was a bit of hand holding with the diagrams. Then what we realized is that people wanted to learn, or people wanted to basically open this and go. And you might not have cell phone service where you are, so you can't download the PDF. So I decided, okay, let's make videos to put on our website because some people are visual learners that way. And then we also made the kit papers into booklets that open to teach with diagrams the 4 basic stitches. So this way, if you gave it as a gift on the way home, like in the car, you could start it, or you could buy it when you are on your trip. You could start it on the airplane, not having to worry about, trying to get the PDF before you take off. So we really fought, my husband and I. We had some big arguments about the packaging because I was so gung-ho for boxes. I really wanted craft boxes. I'd seen other people making them, other embroidery kit designers. They looked so nice. And so at one of my trade shows, I put up this sample box that I had bought from a custom box guy. It had a wraparound. Basically, our kit paper wrapped around it. That had to be taped. And then the top and bottom of the box had to be taped because they pop open. And it was this really skinny box because it was only as wide as the hoop. And so it still said what was all inside of it. And there were little, pictograms, infographics showing you everything. And I asked everybody who came in, some had carried my stuff before and some hadn't, like, how do you feel? Like, if you could have them in the box for your order, would you like it? And oddly enough, the message that I got over and over and over again was, no, we want the cellophane. Because sometimes my stuff goes into toy stores. And so one of the ladies ran the toy store and she said, my customer will rip that box to shreds, in a day.
Wow.
Because they want to see what's in it.
Right.
So they'll open it. First thing they're going to do, they're going to tear it open. She goes, and then I've got all your stuff all over my floor and I don't know where it goes. The other thing she said is, I got to find something to put that in because it's too skinny to stand on its own because they flop over. So she's like, I'm going to have to prop them on a shelf, but then they can fall and slide off. They have hardly any weight too, which is what I realized when I found some in person in a shop. I got all excited. Like, I finally found the box. I want to see what it looks like. It's so light that it actually feels cheap.
Uh-huh.
It's like this empty plastic, it's this empty cardboard box.
It feels empty. Yeah.
Yeah. That you're paying $30 for.
Right. You're like, there's nothing in this box. Why is it so expensive?
Like, why is it $30?
Whereas a bag, you're like, oh, I see all the stuff inside. I get it.
Yes. So we are still having, my husband and I, arguments about the packaging because if we wanted to get into some place like MoMA, which we've looked at, SF MoMA, they have a higher caliber of packaging. Like, you'd have to go to the museum shop trade show. They're not going to buy it when it's in a bag. It would need to be in a box. The Amcor, I think it is, who runs the people who run the park services, They have their own trade show as well.
Oh.
As my husband put it, like, it's going to have to be in a metal tin.
Right.
You know, kind of woodsy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as we discuss like new avenues we want to go, we realize we may have to offer some of these things in like multiple packaging options, or, you know, we're going to have like the come to Jesus moment to go like, where are the customers? Because if they're not the type that would buy this at MoMA, then it doesn't matter. Then it could be in the bag. It could be in the makery shop. It could be in the boutique instead. And we don't need to worry about the box. But the box still looks really pretty.
Yeah, no.
I can't get over it. But I know people who screen print every box. And I'm too practical. Like, I don't have time.
Right.
Like, and I'm not going to pay for it. And to get a giant sticker costs too much. A lot of the decisions that we make in our packaging, like the fact that we give you a full skein of thread, there aren't very many others who do that. And my thinking is, I don't want to take the time to wind it. You know, like split it in half. And that 20 cents I saved, like I would have had to pay my packer to wind it. So I may as well just give you more thread so you can make something else at the end. Or sometimes my customers use more thread than I tell them to. So it's better to have more. Or, you know, like if you start out like me, you get lots of rat's nests. So you don't want to have just the right amount.
Yeah, that is generous to give them a full skein of thread, because like I designed a kit for Quarto, which is a publishing house, and it's for little felt taxidermy heads. And so it gives you a pattern book for 10, but then there's supplies to make 2 of the 10. And so they give you felt, and they give you stuffing and needle. They give you everything you need, the little backing board for to mount the head. And they give you floss so that you can stitch it. And they definitely don't give you a full skein of floss. They like took the floss off the skein and wound, right? You know,
Somebody
if I said
that, some intern.
Yeah. If I said you needed 36 inches, they give you 36 inches and that's it. There's only 36 inches in there. So, that's generous to give you that much. And so, let's talk a little bit about outsourcing. So I know that, you mentioned that you have, people who stitch up the samples that get photographed. And I know your husband is a photographer. So he's working with you now. Is this his full-time gig?
It is.
Okay. So he does the photography. He does graphic design.
Yep.
And what else does he do?
He does my video, and mostly he's the he's the official lead balloon at the company, because I have so many ideas, and he gets to come in and be the practical one who's like, I don't think that's going to work, or like, let's actually run the numbers. Because when he doesn't come in, we get into trouble. Like I made a line of stuffed animals once because that's what my customers said they wanted.
Right. So there was briefly a line, and they were cute too. There was a llama. Speaking of llamas, there was a llama.
They were adorable, and I had to learn how to sew. I didn't know how to sew. So
and it was like a kit to make your own. What animals were there besides the llama?
So my husband helped me design a giraffe. I'm actually staring at the line because it inhabits our bookshelf now. We made a sheep, a scrub jay, which is kind of like a blue jay bird. And then we made a Shetland pony with a sweater for Christmas. And my favorite was it's the easiest one. It was a blue whale.
Okay, so you had a whole line
levels.
You had a whole line of these kits that were sort of a sew your own stuffed animal. And did they involve embroidery as well, or no, just sewing?
You could add it. So they all had little things that you could embroider on them. Everybody said we want something harder, and stuffed animals were really big. There were people doing that. The feedback that came back after they launched, because we had to get boxes, we had to screen print the boxes, we had to find a way to stuff the stuffing in the box. The feedback that came back was, A, I don't have a sewing machine. B, like, it's $40. I could buy a stuffed animal for that. And shops just couldn't sell them because you could buy at like Etsy Renegade craft shows, and you could buy somebody else had made you one for $40. It was really disappointing. I completely shot myself in the foot with it, but I learned some great sewing skills. And I learned better how to listen to customers. So then actually we revamped it and came out with a line of ornaments that you blanket stitch the outside of. They were the same animals, just they were smaller ornaments. You'd still stuff them. And those didn't sell either because now they were seen as too easy. It's like, I just can't win. So I am very leery with the business right now to do anything that isn't just an embroidery kit.
Because those seem to be the things that sell the best.
Correct.
Okay.
And I've tried iron-ons and my customers don't respond to those. Kind of like more old-fashioned ones where it's lots of different designs and you could kind of pick and choose and put them together. My customers don't really respond to that. So it's just kind of becoming better at knowing what my customer actually wants.
Right.
Despite what they say.
Despite what they say. Absolutely. I know. I think that that's really important, and not letting people try to convince you or push you around, and sort of having a very clear vision. I think is really hard to do at times too. And so, okay, so you also mentioned you have a packer, and does she work from her own space or does she come to you?
She works from her own space, so she comes to our house at the beginning of the week and picks stuff up and then brings it back at the end of the week. She just has a part-time job otherwise, and her daughter just moved out of the house and is getting married. So it's perfect. She's got nights and weekends to herself and she loves it. She just puts on like soap operas and packs away.
Okay. So you have a packer. And then do you have anybody else who works on your team, or is that it? Your husband, you, and your packer?
I have a virtual assistant who mostly she does market research for us. So she will look at what our competitors are up to. She'll look at trends on Etsy and on Pinterest. She will find the shops that we're going to pitch in the next cycle and get all the information. She does a bit of our social media in terms of just grabbing the stats for us.
Okay, great. And then the very last thing I wanted to ask you about, well, we have many other things that we could talk about, but we're going to be a little bit short on time. It's just about your subscription club and what that has helped to sort of provide for you as far as steady income.
People began to get addicted to the patterns, and I would sometimes have flops. Like I put something out because I needed money, and it was falling into the same trap as with the art prints. You said you wanted this, and I would be getting stressed and I needed the money. So it's a fast launch. Here it goes. And then nobody would buy it. So I had run a club once before and I hated it because it just sent the PDFs via email, but then it was always making sure everybody's emails are right. And the PDFs were, I hate PDFs for my work. They're so complicated to print out and draw that, sometimes I would get things back from customers and it would kind of look like a kindergarten drawing. And I'd be kind of embarrassed that was going out on social media with my name attached to it. And it wasn't their fault. It's just that it was really hard. So I knew I didn't want to do PDFs again. So I tried to figure out what's the least, the minimum viable product that I could make a club with. And it was the pre-printed fabric, the thread, and the directions. That's all you need. They already have a hoop. They already have a needle. It'd come in a little envelope that was printed. So I don't need to use any cellophane, which is great environmentally. And it comes monthly. And we do offer a few different variations now because people get busy. When we launched, I was going to be happy if I had 10 people. And we passed 50 the first day. And I was like, okay, you got some crazy addicted fans now. And it just kind of kept growing from there. As many join as equal those that leave every month. So we're kind of just percolating around under the 200 mark now. But what it does mean is that every month I know that money is coming in, and it's a huge boost. It definitely has let me be more creative. Like I said, I take the time and I make probably 36 patterns, and then we weed it down to 12. I let the customers vote between patterns or colors or give their advice. What it also allows me to do, though, is actually test out patterns that would then come to the club. So I no longer put something out that flunks and then have this feeling of dread because I've also sold it to my shops.
Right.
It's happened a few times. Now I know I'm confident when I put it on my line. She's like, this thing's going to sell. Don't worry. My club went crazy for it. We had X number of people join just to get this. And it's been a huge confidence boost, because other times I'd send out the line sheet and they'd order something and you're just like, oh no, like, I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a great testing. It's a great testing ground. The same way that taking something to a craft fair is, but this allows you to stay home and not have to go to the craft fair.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't have to produce it to the full extent yet.
Right.
So that also helps. And I do have test stitchers for that. So they also can give me feedback. They actually take the photographs that I then use for social media. So I provide them with like the backdrop, the wood that they photograph on, and then they send me X number of photos as they're sewing. So it really gets to build this sense of community. And now for 2019, what everybody has said, which helps me learn more, is they want new stitches. So I'm actually learning new stitches. And then, they've given me more feedback of like, we'd like this instead, or we want more options for how to do the design. Because what I've been discovering since I'm not my customer is that a lot of people identify as creative, but they're not confident in it. So they want permission to like do this other stitch. Like I have people email me and they're like, can I do this? Like, yeah, I'm not coming to look. Like you can do whatever you want. But they need that permission.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of person who buys a pattern and who buys a kit. They're buying those things because they don't necessarily have the confidence. They are creative. They want to do something creative. Otherwise, they wouldn't be buying it at all.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was something I didn't realize, because everybody would always be like, oh, I want to make this, but I don't know how. And with my background, I was like, just draw it, Right.
No, right. It's a very different. You're creating
water. Like, think of water when you sew. Like that's what
you're creating a product for other people's leisure time and for their creative expression. And so you just have to get into that mindset and understand who your customer really is. And so it really sounds like, Megan, like you've done a lot of customer listening, which is really interesting. And sometimes it's gone well and sometimes it hasn't gone well. But all right, I want to make sure we get to your list. And so you wanted to recommend a podcast that I also love, which is called How I Built This with Guy Raz on NPR. I've listened to every episode. So
yes, I know, I just binged it.
That's a great show.
What I really like about it is like every year my husband and I kind of have discussion like, this year's going to be better. I know last year didn't go as planned. We didn't make as much as we thought we would. This year's going to be different. Like we've never yet had the feeling this isn't going to work. We know that it's going to take time, and so we kind of start each year like, do you think we can do it? And the answer is always yes. And listening to these podcasts, it's really helped, because they're like, it took me 5 years to get to X or 8 years to get to X. And so it really helps you take that longer picture and go, as long as you deep down really think this can work and you've, put in the time and effort, like it can work. It's just going to take longer it might take longer than you thought.
Yeah. And the thing I also really pull from that is about persistence. Which I think is sort of echoing a different aspect of what you're saying, but, hanging in there. And, I always say to people, like, I will be the last person standing. Like, I'm not going to quit. I'll just keep going. That's the way, like, that's just the nature of my personality. Like, I'll just always be here doing the same thing, because it's what I really like to do. And so I'm not going to stop doing it. And I think that goes a long way sometimes, even if you're not necessarily the most talented person or, gifted or whatever it is at what you're doing. If you just keep on doing it, sometimes that pays off. So, and I think you hear that a lot in the stories of the people who are on that show. They just don't quit. They like refuse to give up. So that's heartening for me. And then you also listen to the Very Serious Crafts podcast with Haley. There's a bunch of the people and Molly who do that show have been on this show.
Yeah, Heidi is my childhood friend. Our lives are so similar. It's a little freaky because we both are brothers the same age and come from mixed religious families. And we grew up together, and she constantly amazes me with her talent. And then when she started the podcast with the others, it was really nice because I helped her kind of get into her own business. And so it's been really fun to see where she goes. And then these other women who are so talented at what they do, it's a very serious craft, much more than mine.
Yeah, it's fun. And it's fun to have a new craft podcast on the scene for sure. Yeah. The more the merrier. So bring them on. And then you also wanted to recommend Shishiko Supplies by Olympus. And these are from a Fancy Tiger.
Yeah. So a lot of local craft shops sell them now. I know if you're here in Portland, Bolt sells them and Assembly. But Fancy Tiger is one of my vendors, and Olympus, I think you can actually get them on Amazon too, but it's always nice to support local shops. They're just so much fun. So Shishiko's really kind of exploded onto the scene, and it's really meditative. And the designs are just so gorgeous. I love how efficient the Japanese are in designing things. It started out as a mending technique, and then they really embellished it to just be the most beautiful designs. But then it's so different than Western embroidery, where they said, like, yeah, we're going to make a lot of stitches, but we're going to do it in one go. I kind of love that mentality of like, I'm going to figure out a way to do this really fast.
Yeah, totally. And it's so neat and tidy. And yes. I do love it with mending, and I want to do some, even if it doesn't need to be mended, but like on some jeans, just because it's so beautiful, like on really dark denim.
Yes.
Yeah.
My husband's been mending all of his shirts with it lately.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Oh, it's so pretty. It's really, I love it. I agree with you. It's really nice. I need to, maybe it's a good project for the summer. I feel like when I'm on the go and need handwork to do. So that would be good for me.
There's a great book. Jessica Marquez just put it out, the Make and Mend.
Oh, yeah. I had that in my holiday gift guide. Yeah, I had that in my holiday gift guide this year. So I know I need to get on that. I want to give it a go. So, well, Megan, thank you so much for like your honesty with sharing your numbers and some of the ups and the downs of your business, and just for taking the time to be on the Walshing Apps podcast. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
And you've been listening to the Walshing Apps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Visit my blog, walshingapps.com, where you can sign up for my email newsletter to get the best in sewing, blogging, and small business delivered right to your inbox each week. Today's episode was sponsored by the Craft in Style subscription box from Pop Shop America. If you love to DIY, then go and get a modern and cool kit delivered to your door each month with the Craft in Style subscription box from Pop Shop America. The boxes ship within 3 business days, so there is no waiting like other subscription boxes. And each box is super stylish and beginner friendly. January's box is a gilded dinosaur planter kit with 4 live plants, colored rocks and moss, and all the supplies you need to create a super fun planter. And be sure to use the code WHILESHENAPS to save 15% off at checkout. So head over to Pop Shop America and take a look. Thank you so much, Pop Shop America. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.